All right, the internet is telling me it's showtime, so it is showtime. What's up, Keystroke Mediums? Tonight we have a very special edition of Meet the Editor, Meet the Author and the Editor, and it is Kalene Williams, who you already know. But I thought let's have her on the show and let's ask her about her writing experience and inspiration, what makes her tick, what really goes on in the mind of Kalene Williams.
I don't know if we want to go that deep.
And I'm totally out of breath because I just ran downstairs to get a Kalene drink.
Blue Moon is delicious, and I love that honey one.
And apparently I'm really out of shape because just running up and down the stairs was enough to make me out of breath.
Don't feel bad. I just had to climb up and down a bunch of ladders at work, and I'm driving home and my legs shaking as I'm trying to hit the gas pedal. I'm like, this isn't good.
All right, guys. So to Kalene, to authors, to writing, cheers. Yeah, it's pretty good.
All right, let's do this thing.
All right, so Kalene, tell us about your writing, what you love to write, what got you into writing, what's your story? Tell us all.
Okay, how deep should I go? Let's see. Oh, hey, Jay Cliff and Facebook user.
That's Walt.
Oh, and Walt. Hello, Walt. What got me into writing? Actually, I'll go a little deep because that's the truth, and we might as well pull the truth. What got me into writing was I was not in a good headspace, and I had no outlets. I was pretty much getting lost in my own head to the point where I'm kind of lucky to still be here. I'll say it that way. And it was kind of an accident. My friend did a lot of role-playing online things. And thank you. And got another drink. She's like, hey, you should totally come on and do these things. We create characters, and it's like live action storytelling, and it's so great. And I'm just like, meh. And I did, and it was fantastic. That's actually what got me creating my first universe, Krunthi, because I wanted to be a GM for one of the role-playing forum things. So I started creating that, and, I did a lot of, not necessarily poetry, but very, very purple, flowery prose type of writing. Just the music of writing, not so much the characterization, the story plot, just the music of the words. And that helped me through so much. As I got older, I fell away from writing. And then after I had my daughter, I wasn't in a very good place in all realms. And I kept asking myself, as she gets older and she's looking at me, the way that I looked at my mom, how hard she worked. And when I had found out that my mom gave up one of her dreams in order to support her family, I'm like, I love her to death for that. She, just to give us what she didn't have as a kid. She gave up her dreams for that. And I wanted to be able to show my daughter that you can do both. Both is possible. You can support your family without giving up your dreams. So long as you know what you're reaching for and know how to get there. And that was where my writer's journey really, truly began, was figuring out how to make that writer's dream a reality and what those steps were.
And for you, that's me. That's awesome. Yeah, you on the Sarah Nafke episode, I remember you were saying, we were talking about being a single mom and how you can balance that with your kid and balancing responsibilities. And of course, family first, the kid first. If I preached for writers, it would be sleep first, but not everyone's on the same page as me on that. I understand. But you said that your daughter is kind of the fuel for your writing.
She is, when she was a baby in her little bassinet thingy, she would sit on the bed in her little thing, and I would bounce her as I'm sitting there. Everything was longhand. I didn't have a computer then to really write on, so everything was in notebooks with highlighters and stuff, like go to page 4 and this and that. And oh god, it was crazy. And so, I mean, that's how I would write. And I would just like see her and I'd just keep reminding myself, what is she going to see when she looks at you? You know, what are the thoughts that are going to go through her head? Because I remember the thoughts that went through my head with my mom, and I wanted them to be just as good. And I honestly thought, you know, what can I add to her life that, you know, beyond what my mom has already taught and showed me. And the only thing I really could think of was never give up on your dreams, and they can still support you if you take the right steps to do that.
And for you, what have been the right steps for pursuing the dream, but still, you know, having that balance in your life of being the good mom, being the breadwinner at your home, having friends, you know, doing this podcast. You've got your friend circle too. So what does that writing process look like for you?
Well, in the beginning, I did not have this such amazing community around me. I was all by myself on my own little island, bouncing my daughter on my knee, you know, looking at my mom, feeling like a pile of crap because here I was with nothing. And, you know, I should have more than what I did, was what was in my headspace. And, you know, I still had a day job, but I'm like, I don't want to do that for the rest of my life because I remember what it did to my mom. And I wanted to be able to merge both. So in the beginning, it was just write as much as I can, try and get into the characters' heads as much as I can, try and make the story as best as I can. I called on anybody and everyone who would listen. If I wrote a chapter and I was really proud of it, and we would go over to my aunt's house, she had a friend who absolutely just loved my writing. And she would get so excited. I'm like, hey, I have another chapter. She's like, oh, everybody get the wine. We need to listen to Kalene read. And she's like, shut up. I'm listening to her read. And so I would read her my chapters. And she was one of like the biggest fires that just kept me going, kept me writing, even though that book will never see the light of day.
Sure.
She go, yeah, no, that one I rewrote it. But I needed that, you know, I needed that kind of, you know, excitement. And I was very, very great, lucky and blessed to have that. And as I progressed, you know, I published a couple books. Somehow I found 20 books. And then from there, you know, I kept myself open to talking to people, to commenting on different posts if I felt like what I had to say would add to what was already said. And, you know, from there, it was just like things really started to fall into place. I understood more my weaknesses. I understood more my strengths. I played more off of my strengths. I am continuing to do what I can to, you know, strengthen my weaknesses. And, you know, in doing so, I have the best family in the world now. I have Keystroke Medium. And I will be forever grateful to you guys, every single fucking one of you. Y'all don't even know I'm going to start crying. I'm going to stop right now. Stop it crying.
Cheers.
And, cheers. Because everybody has, and I kept myself open to that. You know, I wasn't pursuing anything other than the knowledge in everybody's head and trying to do what I could to share the knowledge in my own head, even though half the time I felt like, this doesn't mean shit, woman, what are you doing? But I did it anyway. So, you know, and now my writing process hasn't changed too much from what it was before. You know, I when I'm writing, I hear there's a music to the words, you know, and it's become far more refined. You know, the music I heard before was wild and chaotic, and, you know, the galaxy was just bursting forth and the stars were abound, you know, and now the galaxy's settled down. You know, we're going to go onto the planets. We're going to check out what's going on with the animals, the plants. You know, so like, I know, crazy in my mind, but, you know, so that's where I'm at now. You keep finding the ways to improve yourself without losing who you are.
Right. And that might look different for different people.
And yeah, it will look so completely different for everybody.
For you, I guess you're kind of getting the first draft out, and then you're paring back, you're getting more concise in the revision stage.
Well,
people might be the way around.
If you're talking, okay, so if we're Yeah, I totally went to a different direction with that question. Actual writing these days, I vomit everything out. I get everything out that I can. And I keep doing that until I run out of ideas. I don't pay attention to the order. I usually have an idea of who the main character is, in their head. Like, they're basic as what? Oh my god! I had his name and it just fell out of my face. Guy we were talking to just last night. Why can't I remember his name?
Oh, Clark.
Clark, thank you.
Chamberlain.
What Clark was saying, I have just that basic, pawn piece of a shell of a person, and I have an ending in mind. Everything else from the beginning to that ending and their growth as a person is just, all the pantsing in the world. And then once I have expelled myself from all of that, I go back to the beginning. And then I look at it like, some of you may die, but it is a risk I am willing to take. And if it doesn't fit with whatever I may have found in all that discovery writing, I cut it. If I can reuse it, I try to rewrite it. But that's sort of like my beginning process.
All right, we had a question from chat.
Oh my goodness, I have questions.
You have a question. Jay Clifton Slater wants to know, what are Kalene's 3 rules for writing?
Oh my goodness. Okay. I have to come up with them right now on the spot. What would be 3 rules? Probably not necessarily rules, but 3 things I always keep in mind when I'm starting a new story is, if I were sitting in a room with this character, how would they behave? So, in my day job, I meet a lot of different varieties of personalities, different varieties of speech patterns. And, I'm always paying attention to how they interact with, if they're coming in as a group, how they interact when they see other people in the store. And so I imagine, how would my character be if they were in front of me? How could I see them? How could I perceive them? What's one thing about them that I can pick out? Just like one, minor detail that I can sort of like latch onto. One character I had, he was constantly doing this thing right here.
Yes.
And it drove another character up a wall. So there was actually a scene where they're sitting on a roof and, they're waiting for this one thing to happen, either sneak into the house or not sneak into the house. And the guy's sitting here doing this, and the other guy can hear it. And he's like, will you seriously knock it off with that? And, so it just gave that slight bit of deeper dynamic of the character core, I guess you could say. Mm-hmm. Another thing I keep in mind, this is getting hard now, is the end goal. What ultimately do I want to say? With I guess with door number 1 in Farthest Reach, for example, by the end of it, I wanted to be able to depict the strength of doing what is right, even though it could mean losing everything. I don't know if that's what people will get out of it, but that's what I kept in my head. So there's this one character who's been wrongly imprisoned. Try not to do spoilers. And another one who discovers it. And then there's a third one who's involved in it. So, there's that dynamic of, if the guy pursued trying to help, I mean, it could just totally ruin his entire life. He could freaking die. But he does anyway, because that thing is wrong. With door number 1, it was a sense of needing to go beyond where you currently are. You're in a shitty situation. There's something more beyond the stars. There's something more beyond. There has to be, like, this can't be all that there is. There must be more that I can do. And that was kind of like the thing I kept in my mind that way. So I sort of have like that sort of theme in my head for a story. And when it comes to novels, the longer things, I do that per scene. So, I have my ultimate end goal, but per scene, each scene needs to have some sort of, meaning. What is this for what character, or what is this for the plot as a whole? And I keep that emotion in my head as I'm writing it and what I'm trying to deliver. Number 3, I'll have to come back to that. I'll have to think of something. I don't know.
Well, we'll come back to that for that special number 3. But first, to throw a little surprise on you.
Oh no, you didn't say there was going to be surprises.
No, I didn't. I didn't at all. I was thinking, we love hearing you read stories every Monday. It would be awesome if we could hear you read your story.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I will do that.
I could read your story to you, either one. I thought I'd leave it,
So I will read it. Yes. I do not have it on this computer.
Oh, wow.
I'm gonna need
you want me to send it to you?
Yes, if you could send it to me, then I can open it and then I can read it.
All right, so you got to entertain the masses while I...
Hello, masses. Corvo, thank you for dropping by and saying hello, and he will listen later, but that's okay. Jay Cliff, I will get back to you on that third one. What would be my third one? I've got a personal trait of the character. I've got an emotion of the scene or the story as a whole, depending on what you're writing, short story or novel. And what else do I do? What else do I always keep in mind? Dynamic. I always want there to be some sort of tension. Like if there is a scene going on and it's just sort of like, hello, how is the weather today? The weather is fine. Can't you see that it is raining? I do see that it is raining. God, stop it. Some sort of tension, whether the world is exploding or two characters really hate each other or really love each other. And there's just, you can just feel it oozing out of the words. Some kind of tension, positive, negative, make it ooze. That would be my number 3.
Now, do you need to feel the tension as the writer to, like, as a little test to see that you're getting it into the scene?
If I can't see it as a movie reel in my head, because that's sort of how I think. I can hear the sounds really clearly in my head, and I can see pictures moving really clearly in my head. If I can't see it like a movie, then for me, I haven't gone deep enough as to what I'm trying to say with either that scene or that story as a whole. So for actually C481, I struggled so hard with the middle because I could not see the middle. I knew it needed to happen in the middle, but I could not see the movie reel. So I probably wrote 6 different scenes happening for the middle with 6 different starting points, from going from beyond where it initially started in the end to even after where I ended up starting it at published date, just trying to figure out what the hell is going on in the emotional tension for this part of the story. And once I finally found that, the movie reel blossomed and I knew I was on the right track.
So part of your writing experience was you found a key scene that you knew wasn't quite right. So you made 6 different versions of it to get the very best one.
I did.
And then at the next stage, you sent it to Ellen, right?
Yes, I do.
So how did it change?
Absolutely none of my writing goes to sees anybody else's eyes until it goes through either Lauren or Ellen first. And that's every submission.
And then how did it evolve in the course of editing? Between sending it to Ellen, getting it back, and reviewing things, like how did your manuscript kind of evolve?
So when it comes to the editing, I usually have like 1 or 2 spots that I still feel like I'm not really sure, but all the pieces are fitting. But to me, there just still seems to be something wrong. And I can't see it anymore because I have spent way too much time on it And usually these days, I don't have enough time to stick it in a drawer and wait a few weeks to come back to it.
Right.
So once I hit that point, I'm satisfied with the verbiage. I'm satisfied, 90% with what's, being fleshed out. That's when I send it to either Lauren or Ellen.
Mm-hmm.
And Lauren especially, oh my God, she can pick out, she's just like, so this bit right here, I'm not really sure, but I just feel like this character needs something, or that scene needs something, or, you're getting a little bit too here or there with that. And then I'm just like, that's fucking it. And then I write these things all furious and crazy like, and then I send it back, for, the full edit. And she's like, how the heck did you come up with that from what I said? And I'm like, that's just the magic we have. You can see where my brain is saying there's something wrong. And then as soon as you point it out and you say the things you say, I'm just like, yes, that's it.
And while she's pulling up the manuscript, because she's going to read to us her own story, just want to make a point to make things really clear for everyone. When we talk about editors, we're talking about editors we know, but there are a whole lot of fantastic editors out there. There are a lot of fantastic editors in the keystroke medium community, ones we're starting to meet, but ones we haven't even met at all. And there's a lot of people outside of the keystroke medium community. There are authors that are thinking about becoming editors. There's a lot of really great people out there. And we just want to encourage everyone and applaud everyone doing a good job out there and trying to get better in their own writing and in helping other people to get better in their writing too.
And that is actually how I, finally got started in editing.
Mm-hmm.
My strength is really in digging in at line level, the words and how they're stitched together, and digging in at the developmental level of how each piece fits together. If someone gives me like that, partially formed statue of a thing that's going to be magnificent, it's just like, yeah, it explodes in my head and I get really excited, and that's where my strength is. And then so I started doing that for other people, and I'm just like, I really like this. I can do this thing. You never know.
Yeah, just take some steps and keep moving forward, and you'll get there. Just keep on learning. And we're really glad, Kalene, that you did and you kept at it and that you're here. And we love you just the way you are. I went to see the Mr. Rogers movie. It's been in my head ever since, but we don't care about the toys beside you. We don't care about your hair. We don't care about any of that stuff. We only care about you. So thank you for being awesome.
Oh, thank you. Because, and I have to do this, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor? All right, there we go. I had to do it because we missed karaoke night. And it had to happen. Okay, here we go. So this is my story for Farthest Reach called Door Number 1. And I'll just read the first wee bit. Okay. 2 more seconds. Just 2 more drip, drip seconds, and Chris would start tearing at the interior of the ship like a madman. His mood oscillated between pissed off and grumpy. Sure, the double pay for the job would be nice, but it came with baggage he woefully regretted. Space travel, Frank, and a wretched stench of sulfur and sweat permeated the air. A week later, and he still couldn't find where it was coming from. Now the incessant dripping wormed its way into him, poking at a nascent migraine. You doing okay up there, buddy? I can hear your cursing on my end of the ship. There's tape on the pipes. Tape. I've been picking at it for 3 hours, and now I'm finding loose valves. I'll trade you. Keep your numbers and calibrations. I'll stick with solid things. He squatted, finding the culprit for his pounding head. Got you now, you little bastard. Don't say I never offered. I'm gonna need some of that liquid freedom you have stashed after this. Whoa. I know a place we can crash planetside, near the telestations. We'll polish it off and take a day of rest. Kayla would have my head in a grinder. See, this is why I never let one tie me down. All that nagging, it ain't good for you. Chris wished he could slap Carl upside his head. He got as comfortable as the tight space would allow, twisted sideways with his arms halfway bent over his head, made tightening the valve tricky, but he had his eye on it. The crime this thing was committing against his sanity ended now. Maybe I'll take you up on that rest day, Chris said. She's always a little feisty when she's mad. Carl cackled, spewing a torrent of vulgar rejoinders that threatened to make him blush. Chris muted the calm in his ear and leaned into the wrench, pulling until his arm shook. He needed one more good turn on the valve to ensure it wouldn't work itself loose again anytime soon. The pipe buckled. Hot steam poured from a new crack. The cloud licked down his arm with a menacing hiss. He flailed, conked his head, and landed halfway in the corridor, holding his arm to his chest. Chris let out a guttural scream, stumbling to his feet. Why would anyone not report this kind of wear? Damn it, divine forsaken! Arrgh! A firmly placed boot sent the wrench flying. That's it. I need a break, or I'll quit for sure. The occasional glimpse of the twinkling cosmos beyond the cargo ship was his only reprieve. In a catapulting through the vast emptiness of space with only the battered hull to ensure safe travels kind of reprieve. At least they were less than a day out from Mornacoa, and he could hand over the repairs to someone else. He ignored the wear and tear, crying out for a good spit shine. Right now, he needed two things, a medical kit and a strong drink. Make that 3, he thought, getting off this blasted ship. Thump, thump, thump. I'll stop there.
What? There?
I don't know. You want me to go further?
Yeah.
Okay. Go a little further.
Got started.
Okay, let's see. Scroll a little. Chris froze. He thought he was alone in this corridor. Not like Frank kept a huge crew. Just that one guy with a limp who stared every time you sat down to eat some freeze-dried something or other. He'd managed to avoid the strange guy for the last few days. Maybe he was amping up for an elaborate prank by hiking the creep factor. This ship is really starting to get to me. No more space jobs. I'm staying planet-side from here on out. Thump! 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 The pounding sounded desperate, and the instinct to help kicked in. Chris pushed it down, telling himself Frank's new guy had gotten bored with no one to gape at. Thump! Thump! That's it. What possessed him to follow the noise was beyond him. For all he knew, the guy was some crazy, amazing stealth fighter. He could be waiting beyond the next curve and have Chris down on the ground begging for his life. He peeked first. No limping stranger. But there was a door. A rather high-tech door. He felt around the door jamb. The inset seam was flawless, the gape nearly invisible. Tapping the keypad beside it raised even more questions. The screen demanded an access code. Chris touched his earpiece, reconnecting to Carl. Hey, what's the access code to the room off Corridor 4? I got my hands full down here near the engines. I'll get it for you later. Get it now. There's a weird noise coming from in there, and I don't like the sound of it. Everything on this hunk of metal is making weird sounds. You want me to leave the engines and risk not getting planet side? Just pull up the code and you can if I could not. Nah. Just pull up the code and you can get back to your engines. Ugh, fine. Chris tried not to laugh at the clanging and banging from Carl's end. All right, Corridor 4, access code. Chris? You sure you're on 4? Yes, I'm sure. I've been here all day with those ungrateful pipes. There's no codes listed for that corridor. Well, how am I supposed to get in? Take a hammer to it? I don't care. The next crew can fix it. The connection cut off. Thanks for the help. Chris checked to make sure the hall was clear and forced the cover off the panel. Wires, sparks, that's what he expected. An easy way in by cutting the power. Instead, he found rows of perfect octagonal crystals. A luminescent opal sheen rippled across them, and the hair on the back of his neck stood up. How in divine's name did Frank get his hands on tech like this? Whatever Frank was hiding in there couldn't be legal. There we go. I'll leave it that teaser. That's a good teaser.
Good. Yay. So you have to keep reading to find out what he is.
What is behind door number 1? Although I suppose I could have called it corridor 4, but I just like the idea of door number 1.
Because there's a revealing, an unveiling of the thing that's inside. What inspired you to write the story? Where did the idea spark or kind of generate from?
So originally it was I was going to flesh it out to a full like space opera sci-fi novel series.
Mm-hmm.
I had this idea of, this Chris character who did not have a name at the time. He was delivery guy number 1. And him and a couple other guys were actually part of, this whole delivery company. And they discovered this underbelly of, what would you call it? Illegal smuggling, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
And are forced to sort of kind of, fix it, help. And even though they are totally unqualified to do any of that, somehow, they figure it out, do their thing. So when the space opera anthology came out, I had started fleshing it out a bit more, and then completely ripped its guts out and started over. And that's what we have now. If I could write one story where I don't completely rip the guts out after I've already written like 30,000 words, would be fantastic.
That day will come. Just keep writing. That day will.
It gets better. I know faster now when I'm starting to head down the wrong path, but that's because I keep writing. I keep exploring new stories. And honestly, if it wasn't for Josh and Steve and Scott, and even you, I think, said at one point, get out of Krunthe, write a different story. That never would have happened. So
sometimes you have to let it go. Don't let your baby go. Just for now. For now.
Just for now. Yeah. So yeah. So it's still hanging out there. I'll get back to it.
Has editing other people's stories helped you become a better writer? Or change the way you write?
I think so. Because it's a different part of the brain when you're editing somebody else's words versus when you are trying to completely come up with all new words yourself. You're in your own head trying to think, okay, my author voice, the character's voice, the narrative voice, this, that, and the everything. But when you're reading somebody else's words, it's already presented, right there. It's, if you have a suggestion to make a change, you can. But at the end of the day, it's already there. You don't have to do that kind of hard thinking. So it's easier to see how they have chosen to weave certain things together if you are open to paying attention to that. So there are certain things, how I handle character conversations. My action beats have gotten a hell of a lot better. And I want to actually point out the action beat that made Ellen scream like, a paragraph of profanity out me of pure and utter joy.
Ooh, nice.
Was this action beat. And I've already read it, but I'm going to read it again and I took a screenshot of it because it just made me so happy. Let me see if I can find it again. Okay, here it is. Why would anyone not report this kind of wear? Damn it, divine forsaken. Arrgh! A firmly placed boot sent the wrench flying. That's it. I need a break or I'll quit for sure. So in that dialogue plus action beat, there was never he looked. He swung his leg. It was just a firmly placed boot sent the wretch flying. And anyone can imagine in their own way how that's going to look, but it creates that kind of strong picture. And that's the sort of thing that editing other people's work has helped me become stronger, because I see the way that they put their words together and I'm like, well, if you do this. So then when I'm creating all new words, I'm strengthened in that. if that made any sense at all.
So you're developing an instinct for the key details you can include that will click with the reader's imagination, and also what you can leave out.
Being able to see what really needs to be there, cutting the fat, trimming the fat, getting all that out, and being able to dig deeper into the character's head rather than filling the manuscript with he walked across, picked up, looked at, then set it down, went outside, closed the door. I mean, not you're going to eventually have some of those in there, right? I mean, you're going to have some looks, you're going to have some walks, you're going to have some closes, and they're fine, but 150 pages of them. Just saying.
All right. Well, audience, do you have any questions for Kalene? Maybe there are some questions coming in, but one last question I had for you is if there's any would-be authors out there who haven't finished their first manuscript yet, but they would love to be an author, or they've been kind of thinking about it, or maybe they're in that place where you were, where you're struggling a lot, new mom, new experiences, new pressures, new responsibilities, but you had this dream that seems so remote and seems so impossible, but it's kind of there. What would you tell that would be hopeful, wants to be so bad, author?
Well, for that wants to be author, you're probably going to hear this a lot, right? Start writing. Start writing right now. Go write a sentence. He walked through the room. Write that sentence. Write even the worst sentence you can possibly think of. The most prosy, purpley, flowery thing you can possibly think of. Get it all out of your head. Vomit it until you can't vomit the words anymore. And then once you've done that, go back to the beginning. Ask yourself, what am I trying to write? Who is this character? What is the scene? What's the end goal? What are some situations I can put them in that's going to change them somehow? If you want to have a change in character, or what are some situations I can put them in that will change the setting around them? If you want to have a static character, which static characters are not necessarily bad.
No, they
just stay the same. Like Clark was saying, like James Bond, he's not a bad character. He's static. But at the end of the day, if you're an author who hasn't hit published yet, but you have a manuscript, ask people if they want to read it. Many of us authors would love to read as many manuscripts as we can, to help, all of you out. But the truth is, the deeper in you get with the authoring and the writing, especially if you start editing, and I'm also narrating, and I do children's books and a lot of other things, the less time you have, So, but everybody has, somebody, even if you really feel like you have absolutely no one who wants to read it, you've asked everybody, your family says writing is stupid and you should never be an author, jump on a Facebook Live, start reading your manuscript, get some kind of words out there and get people engaged in you, in your words, and then fucking hit publish. Because if you don't hit publish, then you're never going to know, because there's always more words to write. And if you never hit publish, then you're always going to wonder what if. I've hit publish probably 10 times now. Actually, I think 4, 8, I've hit publish 10 times now. And I'm still not where I want to be. But I know better the steps of how to get to where I want to be, because I kept hitting publish. I kept writing the next word. I kept vomiting my story and then making it better.
Well, we do have a couple questions. First from Rick Partlow. Which genre do you enjoy writing the most?
Ooh, that's actually a tough one. I have a couple that I enjoy writing the most equally for different reasons. I love the fantasy genre because I can really hand wavium the fuck out of everything. I can have my magic, I can have my dragons, I can have my long journeys and my whimsy and glowing flowers if I want to. But I have surprisingly found a love I didn't realize I would have for the military sci-fi. I know, right? And in that, the hard sci-fi. So I kind of have those intermixed with each other because both of them, I need to know what the heck I'm talking about. You know, hard sci-fi, you need to know the science that you're talking about. And if you don't know the science that you're talking about, look it up until you can't look it up anymore, and then ask somebody who you believe might know what's going on. The military, they are so freaking dynamic. There's so much going on in there that it blows my mind every day, from the different levels of lieutenant, sergeant, private, and then there's recon teams, and then the regular teams, and then the thing as the whole, and then you mix that with sci-fi, and you're up in space, and I get to like travel the stars and blow shit up, and that is really fun, So I would say, yeah, military, sci-fi, and fantasy, for different reasons, equally the same.
And we had a follow-up. Shadow the Illustrator asks, what genre would you write in if you couldn't do sci-fi?
Ah, fantasy.
Yeah. Why fantasy?
Why fantasy? Because that is the core of where Krunthi started.
All right.
I have a tattoo
That's your tattoo
of my universe. I got it when I was like 18. I really need to get it redone and get it all fancy and super cool. But fantasy is where Krunthi started. That is where my writing chops really began. I had the character who had, the supernatural powers and were, fighting evil, kind of superhero-ish, but not quite. The fantastic realms of worlds and, creatures that could electrocute you and then suck your insides, until you're just nothing but a husk, and then they leave you at the bottom of the jungle floor. It's like that sort of thing. But yeah. I can explore untapped reaches in a different way with fantasy. So
that light themed character that you just mentioned kind of reminds me of your story with Farthest Reach, which I can't get into.
Oh yeah, so I guess a little bit. So that creature is actually in the Delena jungle, and it really just looks like if you took an anaconda and mixed it with a leech, and then added retractable spikes, hollow spikes on it. It wraps itself around its victim, and those spikes are actually conductive. So it cooks the inside of the person until everything liquefies, and then it sucks all of the stuff out of it, and then drops it to the bottom of the jungle floor, and then it's fed for a few months.
Gross. Totally gross. How do you?
They're called the Zritai.
How do you defend yourself against a Zritai?
You don't live on level 3 of the jungle trees, or level 1. They hibernate in level 3, and they hunt on level 1. So level 2 is the safe zone.
So the answer is
they won't hunt there, and they don't hibernate there.
Don't get anywhere close to one. Avoid at all costs. All right, Shadow also asks, when do you know it's ready to hit publish? Good question.
When I start questioning things that I've already laid to rest, I know I need to let it go. So if I've spent a month on something and I'm like, this is fantastic, let's go to the next part. And I'm in the next part and I'm like, well, unless that completely hinders what I'm creating in the next part, it's just like, I'm just like, well, maybe I could make this stronger. Well, maybe I could do this. And I'm nitpicking words, and I'm nitpicking color schemes, whatever it is. That's when I have to let it go. Because at that point, you're beating a dead horse. And it's either get it to an editor, get it to a friend, or just hit publish.
Rick Partlow says, just like Frozen says, Just do like Frozen says and let it go.
Yes, let it go. Let it go. Can't hold it back anymore.
That's right. All right. Well, on that note, thank you for coming on the show and talking about your stories and sharing some of your experience and sharing your passion with us and reading the story to us.
Hopefully I didn't sound too rambly.
No,
she didn't give me questions ahead of time, guys.
not at all.
I had to think of them all on the spot.
This was very spontaneous and unprepared and just a fun time.
Absolutely. Cheers to all of you and all of that. And thank you for people in the chat coming and listening to me talk about myself, which is really weird. It's a very weird thing for me to do, by the way. I hope at least somewhere someone out there can get one nugget, out of my rambling and be able to strengthen their own selves in their own writerly world, whatever it is. If it's confidence, if it's like, if she can do it, I can do it, then I hope that's your nugget. And hit publish.
And where can readers find you and your work?
So I am on Amazon. You can find me, Kalene Williams. That's Kalene. There is no Y. Why? Because I need to come up with a thing for that. Everyone always puts a Y in my name. That's why I say it. Anyway, I'm also on the Facebook, Kalene Williams. If you type in at Kalene W author, I think it is, you can find me. There's Twitter Space. There's what's the other one with the pictures? Instagram Space. I had a Tumblr once. I think I still have it somewhere. And there's Pinterest. I have Pinterest out there somewhere. But yeah, I mean, honestly, if you go into Google and type in Kalene Williams, I have one of those little sidebar thingies with like my face and pictures, and like I'm like on the first 2 pages, so I'm there. You can find me anywhere. I don't know how because, but yeah, you can find me anywhere. Just type my name in. I'll be there.
All right, now, Kalene, here's the awkward segue part where I ask you to do the outro because I don't have it memorized.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming and listening to me. Oh my gosh, a show about me I'm going to kind of be weird about that for a while. Thank you to Rick Partlow, Jay Clifton Slater, Shadow the Illustrator. There was Corvo, I think, up there earlier, and Walt was in there in the beginning. Thank you guys so much for listening to me randomly live on this, the Friday the 13th, the best day in the whole fucking year when it happens, because it's a good luck day. I don't care what anyone else tells you. Today has been fantastic. I feel fantastic. Everybody should be fantastic together. And we're going to talk next time about reading, writing, and everything in between right here on Keystroke Medium. Good night, guys.